Something is happening in the Persian Gulf right now that the mainstream news cycle has not fully explained to you yet. Not the headline, not the breaking alert, not the 30-second update between commercials, the full picture. Because when you look at what is actually being positioned near Kharg Island, when you look at the specific military assets involved and the specific location they have been moved to and the specific moment in the diplomatic timeline that this movement has occurred, the picture that emerges is considerably more serious than anything the headline alone can communicate. And that is what we are going to do right now on Hidden World Reports. We are going to look at the full picture, all of it, every side of it, and then we are going to let the facts speak for themselves. Let us start with the location, because Kharg Island is not just a dot on the map of the Persian Gulf. Kharg Island is the economic heart of the Iranian state. Approximately 90% of Iran's crude oil exports pass through this island's terminal infrastructure. 90%. That means that Kharg Island is not a military target in the conventional sense of that word. It is not a weapons facility or a command center or a missile battery. It is the mechanism through which Iran funds everything: its military, its government, its proxy network across the region, its ability to sustain any conflict it finds itself in. Any force that controls Kharg Island does not just damage Iran. It controls Iran's ability to function as a state. That is what is at stake in the waters of the Persian Gulf right now. That is the target that American amphibious forces have reportedly been positioned near, and that context is essential to understanding why every analyst who covers this region professionally is using language right now that they do not use for routine crises. Now let us look at what has actually been reported and separate it clearly from what is being speculated. According to multiple reports from outlets with established credibility on military affairs, the United States has moved amphibious assault capability into the Persian Gulf region in a configuration consistent with preparation for a potential landing operation near Kharg Island. These are not destroyers. These are not carrier strike groups conducting freedom of navigation operations. Amphibious assault ships carry Marines and landing craft and the full logistical infrastructure of a force designed to put personnel on the ground. Their presence in these waters in this configuration at this moment is not routine, and military analysts are not treating it as routine. What is also being reported consistently across multiple sources is that the operation, if it exists in the form being described, is on hold. It is waiting for a final authorization from President Donald Trump. The decision has not been made, the trigger has not been pulled, but the weapon, according to these reports, is loaded and pointed. Now let us look at this from the American perspective and understand what Washington says it is trying to achieve. The Trump administration has been pursuing what it describes as a maximum pressure campaign against Iran, a policy designed to force Tehran to the negotiating table on terms that would require significant and verifiable concessions on Iran's nuclear program and on its support for proxy militias across the Middle East. The positioning of military assets near Kharg Island fits within this framework as the most extreme expression of maximum pressure available short of actual military action, a demonstration of capability and will designed to communicate to Iran that the United States is prepared to use force if diplomatic objectives are not met. From Washington's perspective, this is coercive diplomacy at its most direct, and historically coercive diplomacy of this kind has sometimes worked, has sometimes produced negotiated outcomes that neither side particularly wanted, but both sides could accept as preferable to the alternative. Now let us look at this from the Iranian perspective, because understanding Tehran's position is not optional if you want to understand where this situation goes next. Iran has been living under American sanctions and American military pressure for decades. It has developed its entire strategic doctrine around the assumption that the United States represents an existential threat and that the only reliable deterrent against American military action is the credible capacity to make that action prohibitively costly. Iran's response to the reports of American positioning near Kharg Island has been consistent with that doctrine. Iranian officials have stated publicly and through back-channel communications that any attempt to seize or neutralize Kharg Island will be treated as a direct act of war requiring a full military response, and the full military response that Iran is capable of mounting is not something that can be dismissed or minimized. Iran has ballistic missiles with the range to hit American bases throughout the region. It has demonstrated drone capabilities in real operational contexts. It has the ability to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, through which approximately 20% of the world's daily oil supply passes, and closing or even seriously threatening the Strait of Hormuz would produce an immediate global economic shock. And beyond its own direct capabilities, Iran has Hezbollah in Lebanon, allied militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and other proxy forces across the region that would be activated in the event of direct American military action against Iranian territory. From Tehran's perspective, Kharg Island is a red line, and they have said so clearly and repeatedly. Now let us look at what the regional players are saying, because this conflict does not exist in a bilateral vacuum between Washington and Tehran. It exists in a region full of governments with their own interests and their own calculations about what American military action against Iran would mean for them. Saudi Arabia, which has its own complicated relationship with both the United States and Iran, is watching the situation with the specific anxiety of a government that knows its own oil infrastructure could become a target in any expanded regional conflict. Israel, which has been conducting its own military operations against Iranian assets and which has long advocated for stronger American action against Iran's nuclear program, is in the position of a government that wants Iran weakened but also needs to calculate what a full regional war would mean for its own security situation. Iraq, where American forces are still present and where Iranian-backed militias are also present, is perhaps the most immediately complicated case. A government caught between its American security relationship and its Iranian economic and political relationships, watching the crisis with the specific dread of a country that knows it could become a battlefield, regardless of its own preferences. Russia and China, both of which have their own relationships with Iran and their own interests in seeing American power constrained in the region, are watching and calculating what the crisis offers them strategically. The oil markets have already delivered their assessment of the situation, and the assessment is unambiguous. Crude prices have moved upward in response to the reports of American military positioning near Kharg Island, moved in the direction that oil prices always move when the supply infrastructure of the Persian Gulf is perceived to be at risk, and the movement in the markets reflects the judgment of people who manage very large amounts of money and who understand very precisely what Kharg Island means to global energy supply. When the oil markets move on a geopolitical development, it is because the people closest to the economic reality of that development have decided it is serious. The oil markets have decided this is serious. So where does this leave us? What are the possible outcomes from where we stand right now? The first possibility is that the maximum pressure of American military positioning near Kharg Island achieves its intended effect without a shot being fired, that Iran calculates the cost of American action is too high and returns to the negotiating table on terms that produce a diplomatic resolution. This has happened before in the history of American-Iranian relations, and it remains a possibility. The second possibility is that Trump does not give the final order, that the military positioning serves its purpose as a demonstration of capability and will and is then drawn down as the diplomatic situation develops. This is also a historical pattern in American military diplomacy. The third possibility is that the order is given and American forces conduct an operation against Kharg Island, and if this happens, the consequences are genuinely unpredictable because the Iranian response would be designed to be unpredictable, designed to impose costs that Washington did not fully price into the decision, and the escalation that follows would be shaped by decisions made under pressure by governments on multiple sides with imperfect information and their own domestic political constraints. The fourth possibility, and this is the one that analysts are most concerned about, is that the situation escalates not through a deliberate decision by any party, but through miscalculation, through an incident or a misread signal that triggers a response, that triggers a counter-response, that produces a conflict that no one fully intended and no one knows how to stop. What we know with certainty right now is this. American amphibious forces are reportedly positioned near one of the most strategically significant pieces of territory in the world. The operation is on hold pending a decision from the President of the United States. Iran has stated clearly that it will treat any action against Kharg Island as an act of war. The oil markets are moving, the regional governments are calculating, and the world is watching a moment that could resolve quietly or could become something that reshapes the Middle East and the global energy order for a generation. At Hidden World Reports, we investigate the stories behind the headlines and present every side of the most critical global developments so you can form your own informed view of the world. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to Hidden World Reports and share this video with someone who needs to understand what is really happening in the Persian Gulf right now. Stay informed, stay critical, stay with us.